showcasing the best in music and the arts in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. This is Livewire Live, sponsored by Chaplin's and the Cellar Bar.
So yeah, Brad, you're here tonight to promote the new Bournemouth Journal.
Yes, thanks for having me again here, Chris. I was here a few weeks ago with Dominic Wong from the Bournemouth Writing Festival.
Yeah. No, you were on my last show and you said, "Oh, can I come back again?"
Yes.
I was like, absolutely, that's fine.
Couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And we've since had the Writing Festival, and it was a lot of fun. And we had a celebration of the Bournemouth Writing Prize during the festival, where our prize winners got on stage with Born Jammy.
Yep.
And read some of their work, which was pretty interesting to see because you have a live band that's improvising basically a soundtrack to spoken word. So the poet and the short story writer, they go up on stage and they turn to the band, and the band says, "Okay, what do you want us to do?" And they give them a little bit of direction. So, for instance, Hannah Bunting, who was our short story winner, read an excerpt from her piece because it had to be fairly short. And she said, well, in this, there's a part, it's based on the Icarus myth. She said there's a part where Icarus soars up into the sky and then encounters some turmoil and then crashes down and hits the sea, and there's waves crashing. And the band's just nodding along. Okay, we'll do it. And then she reads the piece, and perfectly in time with each one of those sequences, you have the soaring and the descent and the crashing of the waves. And it was beautiful. Yeah. It's really exciting to see because it's happening right in front of your eyes. There's this spontaneity to it. So that's something that we want to keep doing each year. And one of our students from the degree that I'm a program leader of the MA Creative Writing and Publishing at Bournemouth University. And so one of our students, Melanie Davies, came along and read a piece, and the band played along with her. And so it was a big celebration of this prize that we do every year. And so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is the Bournemouth Writing Prize, but we also wanted to talk about the Bournemouth Journal. And we have Miriam Culy here, who's here, and Holly Bacon, who are both working on this journal. And it's a brand new thing. It's an international literary review, and it's something that we're just bringing out into the world for the very first time. And they're working on the very first issue of it, so it's a pretty exciting moment for all of us. I guess to go back very quickly to the Bournemouth Writing Prize, one more thing about that. So now we have submissions are open for both the prize and the journal, and the prize is in its 10th year. So, and because we partnered with the Writing Festival for the first time in this last iteration, we had a bigger success than we've ever had before, and that's allowed us, now we're tripling the prize money. For the prize, we're offering £3,000 worth of prizes. We're offering 3 times as many opportunities to win, different categories. And there's 3 different types of ways that you can get published. So if you win, you get featured in an anthology. If you're shortlisted, you're also featured in an anthology. And our students and staff put together this anthology. But also the winners will get published in Dorset Magazine. So that's sort of the posh, slick pages of Dorset Magazine. You'll have your piece published there. And then there's also, if you don't get shortlisted, you'll still be considered for the journal as well. So there's a lot of different opportunities to get published.
Cool, yeah. So going across to Miriam and Holly then, so how does it feel working on a project like that?
Yeah, it's really exciting working on the Bournemouth Journal. I was a reader for the fiction short story entries of the prize last year, and there were some stories I really loved that didn't make it onto the shortlist. So to be able to see them come into the Bournemouth Journal is really cool for me. And yeah, it's really nice to be able to do something so different, learn how to put all this stuff together, work with different people. Yeah,
it was, I think, one of the key things for us when we were making this journal, it was really the chance for the readers to champion this work, because we asked everyone who was reading the poetry and the prose to be put forward for like the top tier to be judged. We asked them directly, what was your favourites, no matter if they went forward or not, what was your favourite ones, and we put them forward to be included in this journal, which was really important to like recognise the hard work behind the journal, and also the sheer size of the entrance that came in. There were so many, and we wanted this great work to still have the chance to be seen because we felt that it deserved it.
Yeah, there was far more amazing work than we could have fit on the shortlist, and I know that there were a lot of us readers who were going, I wanted this work to do well. So yeah, to be able to still publish that in the form of the journal is really good. I know from the start I was saying about the coat, which is one of the pieces in our journal. I was like, I love this piece so much, I really want this piece to be in it, and it is in the first issue. So it's really nice to be able to do that and to make those decisions and kind of champion the work we want to be championed, having read all the entries.
Yeah. Brad was talking a little bit about this on the show last month, and I said to him at the time that it's such a lovely idea, because when someone enters a writing competition and then, if they don't make it even onto the shortlist or anything like that, it can feel quite disheartening. But it's not always because the work wasn't good enough in its own way. It's just that it's a competition, so decisions have to be made, and it might be that you have to push one piece to the side, but it's nothing really about that piece. It's just that other pieces are grabbing you in a different way. So I think, off the back of the writing prize, the journal will give an opportunity for those pieces to be featured, as you've said, and for those to get out there and find their audience.
Yeah, and it was really nice because I was the assistant fiction editor as well, reaching out to these people and going, we'd really like you to be in the journal. Just like some of the responses I got, they were so like heartwarming and lovely, and it was like, it feels good work, it feels like it's worthwhile, and giving people this like second opportunity to be like, we love your work, please give us the chance to show everyone else how much we love it as well. So it was a heartwarming like process of allowing this.
So if we go to Miriam first, you've got one of your pieces that you want to share with us, which is a short story.
Yes.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about it before you read it, or do you just want to read it and let us find? Okay, yeah. What's it about in a nutshell?
Yeah. So I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user. So most of my stories have disabled protagonists, because it's really important to me that there is that representation. And they say to write what you know, and so I do that. And this short story came about after a really sweet incident with a little girl at my church who just really made me smile. And so that's where this piece came from.
Cool. What's it called?
It's called The Girl in My Chair.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Sometimes being a wheelchair user really sucks. I cursed that damn chair as I wrestled my maxi dress free from the front wheel it had got caught in. Why had I thought a long skirt would be a good idea? I swiftly rearranged my dress so that the muddy streak across the fine blue fabric was hidden beneath me, and the hem was safely away from the treacherous tyres. Exhaling deeply, I took hold of the joystick once more and headed towards the pillared entrance, winding my way around the zigzagging slope to avoid those dreaded stairs. I hadn't wanted to come to yet another event at the community centre. I was only here to support Nessa. I slid into my role as a wallflower as people milled around and chatted, having conversations that went quite literally over my head. I didn't bother trying to join in. I simply watched as people moved and flowed, Nessa flitting between them with the grace of a hummingbird. I smiled as Elena, a small blonde girl with beautiful brown eyes behind pink-framed glasses, ran up to me. "Hey, sweetie, I love that sparkly dress," I said. She responded with a twirl, and I gave her an appropriate amount of approval. "So what do you think of your Auntie Nessa's event?" I asked. catching a glimpse of the handful of lollipops she'd already smuggled. "Good," she replied. "Why are you in that?" She pointed to my chair with a lollipop, direct as ever. I realised she'd only ever seen me on Nessa's sofa. "Well," I said, "my legs don't always work properly. They get tired and sore, so I can't walk very far, and a lot of the time they make me fall over." "So the chair means that you not hurt yourself?" she asked. I smiled. "Exactly." "How's it work?" she probed, eyeing up the joystick. I pressed a button and a green light appeared. "Well, that turns it on," I said. "And this," I pressed the joystick forward, "makes it go." She clapped her hands in delight. "Can I try?" I frowned. "I'm sorry, Elle," I said. "The wheelchair's not a toy. It's like your glasses. You need them because you can't see very well, and I need this because I can't walk very well." She pouted her bottom lip, her eyebrows furrowing as she tried to comprehend this. "But," I added, "I could give you a ride. Want to hop on?" I patted my lap and she clambered on. Holding the joystick, I let her place her lollipop-free hand on top of mine. I pushed forward and she laughed aloud. I couldn't help but smile. I pressed on the increased speed button and she let out a whoop of delight at the exhilarating speed of 2.5 miles an hour. We weaved between people and tables and I clicked up the speed, eliciting another squeal. As we came towards the hall's entrance, she pushed down a little on my hand and we swerved to the right, our back wheel nicking a chair leg. The wooden chair fell to the ground with a loud clatter and several people were instantly hurrying over to right it. To my surprise, I laughed. Not out of embarrassment or awkwardness, but something resembling joy. "Let's go out into the hall, shall we?" I asked Elena, who nodded enthusiastically. I looked down the long carpeted corridor, empty of obstacles, and pressed the speed all the way up, a whopping 4 miles an hour. "Hold on tight," I whispered to her as I pushed the joystick forward and we flew into motion. She giggled in glee, and I found myself joining in. "Ready?" I asked as we approached the end of the corridor that I knew turned left to a downward slope. I swerved the joystick to the side, steering us down the ramp. Her face lit up and she squealed excitedly as if it were a roller coaster. "Again, again!" she exclaimed when we came to a stop. "So what do you think of my wheelchair?" I asked, taking in the glimmer in her eyes and the toothy grin on her face. "It's awesome," she breathed. And for the first time since my diagnosis, I didn't hate sitting in my chair.
Oh,
Fantastic.
yeah, that was it was good. What I like about that is that it communicates it without being too preachy. It's very light-hearted and it's very relatable.
Yeah.
As a story, but it really puts you in that position so that you can imagine your way into it, which is, I think, with writing like that, where you want to draw attention to an issue like that, I think that's the best way to do it, is to put the reader into your head almost and like share the thoughts and feelings with them.
Yeah.
Do you have any writers yourself that like inspire you to write like that?
I think it's hard because there is so little disability fiction out there.
Yeah.
But one that's really inspired me recently is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and there's been loads of hype about this recently and loads of hype about the series and how it's done so well in young adult fiction. But for me, her main character is a young girl with EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Not that it's explicitly mentioned, but it's basically that condition.
Yeah.
And she learns how to ride a dragon. And for me, that's really cool. Like, as a disabled reader, reading a story about a main character who learns how to ride a dragon, even though she's disabled, is awesome. And she has to have like a harness on the dragon, whereas other riders don't, and there's these accommodations, but it's still so much fantasy. It's really lovely because in other young adult fiction, when you look at Katniss Everdeen and Tris Pryor and all these, big YA main characters, they're so able-bodied. They are so active. They are so able to do all these things. So it's really refreshing to me to see how such a protagonist can go and ride a dragon whilst being disabled.
Yeah, because everyone's got that potential within them to be heroic.
Right, we're going to hear from Holly now, aren't we, Chris?
Yeah, we're going to go over to Holly for some poetry. So you've got a couple of poems to share with us.
Yes.
Before you do that, though, I want to ask you as well, what drew you to poetry to begin with? When did you start writing it? What was the thing that made you come to poetry?
Well, ironically, I've always hated poetry. I hated it as a child. I hated it during GCSEs. Absolutely despised it. And then I spent my undergrad focusing on theatre, and that's what I still want to do, and didn't really think about writing. Still weren't that bothered about poetry at all, and then came to this degree, and I thought, actually, this might be a good way to actually write down what I want to write about. And then it's now seems to be all I write is poetry. Just in a complete 180, which my parents always make fun of me about because they were the ones listening to me hate poetry all my childhood. It's just very recent. Since probably September was when I first wrote my first poem, I would say.
So very recent.
Yeah, very, very recent.
Okay. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't really like poetry much when they're at school. And there's something about being forced to read it that doesn't really enamour people to it. But then, later in life, maybe they revisit it or they come to it in a different way, or maybe going to an open mic night or something, because then you see a lot of different voices speaking that aren't necessarily the same as the things that you learn in the classroom. So I don't think that's so uncommon to have had just liking for poetry and come to it a bit later. So the pieces you're going to read for us tonight, what are they about?
So my main themes for any writing is femininity, the spectrum of that, bad women, good women, what decides that, love, expressing love, and also I'm originally from Sheffield, so coming down south has been definitely an experience, and I now write a lot about that as well.
Okay.
Good material.
What's the first one called?
So the first one's called Shame.
Okay.
Oh, what a shame. What a shame it was when you put it on, that phony accent, whilst looking me in the eye. Do you want a round of applause? A well done? A symphony of laughter to validate your joke? I am sorry to break it to you, but I will do no such thing, because your accent was rubbish and you're not even funny. It's a little one there. So that was... And then the second one is called My Love. Your love is the forbidden fruit of my soul. Every day I gorge on its delicacy. The purple juices drip down my chin as I crunch and slurp. I feel my belly grow and swell, wider and wider. Once starved, I lay in the lust of greed with your presence. I am a savage, no longer are thoughts of manners and niceties in this plentiful feast. Daedalus chuckles softly as he strokes my head, and I cackle and squeal as my face and hands grow sticky. You sit there, on the ivory throne I built for you, as you willfully give and give and give. So I feast and feast and feast. The fruit gets in my eyes, staining them with the visions of the cosmos, and every day we dance among the stars, hand in hand.
Nice.
And that's the second one.
I love the staining them with the cosmos.
Yeah,
was
that's my
very-
favourite as well.
That's a good line.
Yeah.
That's a good line. You've definitely got the poetry thing
Yeah.
going on there.
Yeah.
Since you started liking poetry again, or for the first time,
Yeah.
whatever we want to call
Yeah.
it, since you got into it, like, are there any poets that you're reading at the moment, or anything that's particularly inspiring you to write like that?
Yeah, so I suppose the main one is Sylvia Plath, of course, because of like the feminism and also just like the gritty darkness of it. But I also take a lot of inspiration from Florence and the Machine and Mitski.
Okay.
Just the way they portray their words, because at the end of the day, music is poetry. Poetry is music. It's very interchangeable. So I take a lot from how they're able to express ideas and emotions onto words, and also from like a literary perspective, Tessa Moshfegh is a big inspiration, who writes very dark women, like you're not supposed to like these people, and I think being able to write someone so dislikable is a very good skill to have, and it's something that I really like studying almost, and being like, I want to do this. I want people not to like my characters in the best way.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose like the protagonist is always more interesting if it's not just like very cut and
Absolutely.
dry.
Yeah, and especially because you don't really, as for women as well, women characters then normally broken down into like archetypes, and to break away from that and just be like, you're just a nasty woman. It's just like, oh, yes, this is amazing.
I mean, I think that's come into like popular culture more over the last like 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
It's like those really unlikable protagonists. Like I always think of TV shows like The Sopranos or Breaking Bad, where, like Tony Soprano or Walter White. They weren't necessarily likable men. They were doing some very bad things, but at the same time you still found yourself rooting for them.
Needing to know what happened.
Not quite sure why when what they were doing on screen was so awful.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time you couldn't help but go, I hope they win.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. This one's called The Gift, and it's inspired by my grandma and her family. The Hudsons have always been gifted with the third eye. Just the women, of course. It sits at the back of our skulls with rested lid and still eyelashes. And when it blinks and flutters, sending tingles down our spine, we get looking, gets us up and moving. A very helpful gift, messaging a friend when they need to, asking the right question at the right time, hugging a loved one in their moment of weakness. It cannot be planned, it cannot be relied upon. We cannot tell the future, we cannot recall the past. The present day, moment, heartbeat, the eye will blink. So when my great aunt reaches out to her sister over 5 years of silence, we know to hold our breath, to await the truth to come out. We Hudsons have a gift. It cannot protect us against cancer, heartbreak, devastation, but it softens the blow and reminds us that we are not alone.
Oh, very nice. Let's give that a little clap, I think. Cool, yeah. Cool. We are going to go over to Brad to read us the first chapter, I believe, of your novel. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it before...
No.
No? Okay. Well, that was very direct. Thank you, Brad, for being so direct. You don't. Okay, so you just want to read it, and then maybe talk about it a little bit after.
Sure.
Okay, brilliant.
All right. This is from my literary suspense novel that I've just finished. It's called On Poison Wings, and this is the first chapter. American Lady, Vanessa virginiensis, butterflies of North America. With each flap of your wings, bright eye spots portray both predator and prey, whispering in that instant, come closer, keep away. Bren. Hundreds had rocked up outside the community centre, eager to celebrate what they loved most about the late, great Tawny Larson, her silence. For once, The culture clashes were on mute, but the unnatural quiet following the incident had become a kind of vacuum. One folks had started to fill with all sorts of bullocks about the dearly departed, conscripting her to their causes, turning her into a poster child for their tribal affiliations. And all the while, Tawny's silence grew louder, inflating like one of them pretty pink balloons she used to display when decorating the properties she listed. Bren scanned the crowd, seeing her old pal's face displayed on placards paired with crucifixes, rainbows, Confederate flags, peace signs, and black power fists. So many symbols conflated with Tawny's legacy, so many ideologies claiming her posthumous allegiance. As the last blush of sunset hugged the horizon, it seemed as if the pink balloon of Tawny's silence had finally stretched so far and wide it had managed to envelop the whole neighbourhood. A single disturbance, that's all it would take to rupture the thing, transforming the mourners into an angry mob. Bryn held her breath and listened for the inevitable, feeling the crowd push her closer to the shrines, cardboard sheets taped together and covered with pics of Tawn and happier times. A sea of candles had been arranged to illuminate these. Configured into a kind of desperate symmetry they were. Magical thinking is what it come down to. The idea that imposing a bit of order on these waxy white sticks might make sense of the senseless loss. Shivering despite the early summer heat, Bren lit a candle and held it up, casting light onto the marble steps, the brick walls and the solemn faces surrounding her. But there was one thing its flicker and flame failed to illuminate: the cause of Tawny Larson's death. It had been the type of police shooting you read about every day, except for one shocking detail. This time, the victim had been an upper-class white woman. Fox 11 had been uncharacteristically restrained, calling it an unfortunate accident. Mrs. Larson had been arguing with a gent the reporter described as a large African-American male. Responding to a disturbing the peace call, Officer Desmond Joy had entered the property with his weapon drawn. When Tawny rushed toward him waving a pair of scissors, he'd panicked and opened fire. Providing a fiery counterpoint to this account, the Independent Mountain State Spotlight explained how Tawny's lone black neighbour Jordan Farr had endured a months-long harassment campaign, spearheaded by several of their neighbours and the police. The paper accused Officer Joy of manslaughter, saying he'd charged in gunning for Jordan before mistakenly shooting Tawny. Even more theories emerged on social media, each one more outrageous than the last. Tawny had been assassinated by the deep state. She'd sacrificed herself willingly. She'd faked her death and fled to Paraguay. What to believe, and who? For the life of her, Bren hadn't a clue. An elbow jab. She stumbled sideways as Tawn's old frenemy, Shasta Wallace, positioned herself in front of the centre shrine, addressing legions of Insta-followers through her phone. Sisters, that's what we were, me and Tawny. Connected on an almost cellular level. It's like we were the same person. Daubing tear-soaked flare lashes with a silk hanky, her Shastaness continued. That's why this is so hard for me. I've lost my dearest friend, but I've also lost a part of myself. Bren was tempted to lean into the shot and point out how Shasta had double-crossed Tawny at every turn. But before she could work up the nerve, the wily diva darted off, still running her mouth like a broken tap. As Tawny's silence made a comeback, a bright orange butterfly appeared. Like Tawny's posh neighbours, the monarch was both elegant and lethal, its pretty wings full of toxic chemicals meant to ward off threats. Bren had acquired this info from Tawny, who had been an expert on all things entomological. After a bit, the little creature darted off, heading toward Tawny's former gaff, a mint-green colonial with a backyard sanctuary where clusters of nectar sources would offer up tasty noms along its migratory path. Being an Irish expat, Bren appreciated Tawn's kindness in this regard. Tawny had always been quick to welcome newcomers with an outsized smile and a big show of affection, which is why she and Bren had become such good pals from the off. As the monarch ducked behind the colonial, Bren noticed a queer yellow light radiating from the structure. Curious about this, she took a step forward, but got distracted by the next threat to Tawny's silence, the sound of marching bootsteps. She turned to see a bunch of gun-toting gobshites approaching. At the epicenter of these jobs stood the head of the Homeowners Association, George Briggs, an AR-15 slung over his shoulder, a black patch covering one eye and a series of diagonal scars seared into his craggy face. He held up a walkie-talkie and barked, "Perimeter sweep complete, over." As George continued leading his hayseed posse into the thick of the crowd, someone bumped Bryn's arm, and hot wax dripped off the candle she was holding, stinging her fingers. Let it, she figured. Being a lapsed Catholic, she was well versed in acts of contrition, if only she'd done something more or less or different. But sadly, no amount of suffering could atone for her sins or make up for the loss. Soon the last glimmer of sunlight slipped beneath the horizon and proper darkness arrived. Holding up her candle, Bryn studied more pics on the shrine. The book club gals raising flutes of champagne, young Tawny holding baby Abby, even younger Tawny feeding Wade a slice of wedding cake, the two of them looking so carefree and in love, and Wade sporting a full head of hair. How times had changed. Eventually Bryn spotted her favourite pic, one taken out by Wheeler's Ridge, with the wind blowing through Tawn's long apricot hair, her sun-kissed cheeks glowing, her bright blue eyes sparkling like the precious sapphires they were. This was the Tawny Bryn preferred to remember. The blushing beauty whose faith in humanity was often stress-tested but never diminished. The selfless soul, seeing past the sorrows of this life whilst picturing a brighter future for one and all. Bryn searched the pretty face for the answers that eluded her still. Why had it happened? Who was to blame? And how would White Elm Village ever start to heal? "Listen up!" Unica Davis shouted through her handy megaphone, offering the most full-throated challenge to the silence yet. "We've been hearing all kinds of nonsense about who Tawny Larson was supposed to be. Don't listen to none of that. Trust your eyes. See how Tawny lived her life. Then you'll know who she was and what she stood for." Different voices cried out, "Justice, Jesus, peace, revolution." Just then, 3 squad cars and a paddy wagon appeared. Sirens blasted, blue lights flashed, and out leapt a whole mob of coppers sporting helmets, riot shields, and truncheons. Instantly they surrounded the crowd. Unica's crown of hair beads shook like a war rattle as she roared, "These police think they can intimidate us. We going to let them do that?" "No," roared the crowd. "They want us to forget what they'd done to Tawny. Will we?" "No." Bryn struggled to remain upright, steeling herself against the churn of arms and legs. A protest sign smacked the back of her head. A boot kicked her shin. Falling to one knee, she strained to see past the candle's flickering flame to a much brighter light in the distance. The glow, framing Tawny's colonial, had burst into a bouquet of bright orange flames. And on the front lawn, the silhouette of a lone figure was stood motionless, watching the property burn. A woman screamed, "Fire!" Some folks shrank back, others pushed in the direction of the blaze. Things were finally kicking off. Bryn surveyed the homes surrounding her. Their lawns leached of colour by the recent heat wave, their flower beds turned to straw. A tinderbox the whole neighbourhood had become, and God help anyone caught up in the inferno about to erupt. Still, Tawny's silence persisted for a moment longer, grown thin and embrittled, ravenous for obliteration. Bryn turned back to the photo tape to the shrine and watched her old pal's lovely face flicker in and out of view as the flame of her candle sputtered and guttered, tormented by the anxious breath of the night. With her free hand, she pulled the phone from her back pocket, thinking about the voice notes it contained, Tawny's last words, statements certain to change everyone's opinion of their newly minted martyr. As the wind rose, flames spread to more homes, and shrieks filled the air, but this was just the start of things. For better or worse, Tawny Larson was about to have her say. Bryn charged forward then, homing in on Unica's megaphone, bracing herself for the carnage to come. Payback it would be, for how these warring tribes had co-opted Tawny's pain and perverted her legacy. The White Elmers had no interest in the truth, but that was exactly why Tawny needed to speak for herself finally, decimating that bloody silence for good.
When can people find out what happens next?
In chapter 2.
And when will that be, Brad?
Well, that's in the book. The book's done.
Okay.
So I'm getting it out there in the world, hopefully. I'm sending it around, seeing if somebody's interested in representing it.
Sure.
But the next chapter goes back 3 months in time. So you find out what leads to the situation where Tawny is shot.
Yeah. Okay, so it moves about in time.
It just has that one big leap. So it's sort of you start at the end in media res. You get this candlelight vigil, which unfortunately in the U.S. is an all too familiar thing. But what's different about this is now that's an upper class white woman, which is something that's sort of strange to people, and they don't know what to make of it. So all these people are trying to sort of get their spin on it, and it's I've never written anything quite this topical before. I mean, it speaks to, I think, where we are right now. It's when I moved here 10 years ago, and I knew I was going to get a different perspective on the U.S. moving to England, but I had no idea.
Everyone kind of tittered then.
Oh my God! Well, I guess I was the linchpin holding everything together, because when I left, it lost its mind. Yes. So it's.
Oh, I see. So it's all your fault, Brad.
Apparently so. But yeah, I mean, and so this is something set in the U.S., but I think having this Irish character look at it becomes it gradually, it makes more sense as it evolves, because she lived through the Troubles. So she's an expat, and she's seen this before. She's seen neighbor on neighbor. She's seen this type of infighting, and she thought she'd escaped it. She'd moved across the pond to get away from it, and now she's watching this thing happen again. And it's a lot about allyship also, which is a new phenomenon, and it's at this moment where there's sort of this chilling thing happening. We're sort of, 5 years ago was George Floyd, and there was this unprecedented thing where the protests, you suddenly had large groups of white people showing up as allies. And now, the EDI things are banned. Woke is a dirty word. And there's sort of this thing of, was that just a fad? Was that just a temporary thing? Or is there a way forward? And it's. I think these are interesting things to sort of think about and write about right now.
Yeah, definitely. It's where the world is, I think. So it's good questions to explore. We have 2 minutes left, so I think we should also say some goodbyes to our guests for the evening. So we've had on Brad Gyori.
Thank you.
Miriam Culy.
Thanks.
And Holly Bacon.
Thank you.
we only have 2 minutes left, so I think we should also say some goodbyes to our guests for the evening.